everybody. This is Diane. Welcome to Biters.
And this is Marnell, and I didn't think of a snarky comeback.
We're headed into a black summer.
Right? And if I call it Black Mirror, I'm sorry. That's the other Netflix show that's really messed up.
Which I still have not watched.
It's really good. The British version and the US version, like, they're actually both very good.
It's an anthology series, right? I think we talked about it before.
Yeah, it is. They all kind of intertwine in a loose fashion, but you could definitely watch episodes independently of one another.
Well, before we get carried away with Black Summer, I've got to tell you that I'm rereading Good Omens. And I'm not sure how they're going to pull off a limited series and actually get the story across. It's really subtle, and there are really funny things that I'm afraid they're going to miss.
They've got some good casting, though.
Yeah, I know.
I keep seeing the trailer for it. And
have you picked it up yet?
No, I have. Well, I have it, but I haven't started reading it.
It's really funny.
I will have to do that. You got me to read the Walking Dead comics, so
6 episodes or 6 issues.
Yeah, I kick myself for like putting it off because like it's literally like a 25-minute read. You know, it's not even a lunch hour because I mean it's comic book panels. There's like entire pages with no dialogue.
Robert Kirkman would probably be heartbroken to hear 6 months of his life referred to as a 25-minute read.
I think he would get over it knowing that it's a hit series for 9 seasons.
Yeah, he would just have to open his checkbook and he would get over it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'll be fine.
I'm not crying any more tears for Robert Kirkman.
No. So if you are looking for a zombie thriller to take the place while Fear the Walking Dead isn't back and TWD isn't back, Black Summer is a really good replacement.
I have to tell you, I went back last night and watched episode 2. I know we're going to try to stay fairly spoiler free and focus primarily on episode 1 here.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like okay with watching it again and looking for other layers. And so that to me is a good series if you're doing that.
Yeah, and I actually watched a interview with our featured cast member.
Oh, good. I'm wondering if you watched the same one I did.
It was like a half an hour long.
Yeah.
And she mentioned that each episode is an homage to a movie. And
I thought that was so cool.
All different movies. Like she specifically pointed out that the second episode is an homage to Doom, which really wasn't that great of a movie. So I really want to go back and watch episode 2 to see what they mean. But episode 3 is Lord of the Flies.
Yes, which you can completely see.
Yep, absolutely. Kids, you know how I feel about kids.
And she also mentioned the movie Heist.
Yes.
Which I have not watched, but did you see that in any of the episodes?
Yeah. Yeah. They're trying to get guns. Let's just put it that way. Without being spoilery, they're trying to get weapons.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would imagine, and I think this is probably a fair thing to say up front for anybody who's listening, we're probably going to get a little spoilery. I mean, it's hard to talk about essentially an entire season of a series and not be a little spoilery. We're focusing on episode 1, but we'll probably get a little spoilery.
Well, and it's because we've seen the entire series. If we had just watched episode 1, if it was coming out week to week, we couldn't be spoilery. But you can binge the entire 8 episodes on Netflix now.
And it's a quick binge because it's gripping and it goes fast.
And they're like 35-minute episodes.
Yeah, I think the only one that was like a long episode was the first one.
It was 35 minutes.
No, it was actually an hour.
Really?
Yeah.
I swear it was 35 minutes.
No, I'm pretty sure it was an hour.
Netflix is like, they have the super long credits at the ends where they do them in like English and Spanish. And
not on the Netflix I get.
Oh, yeah. Like the very end, I swear to God, they're throwing in Sanskrit and stuff for the credits.
Not on the one that I get.
I'm going to have to send you a screen cap.
So it was about a half an hour, or I'm sorry, it was about an hour long. It was longer than the other ones.
Oh, okay.
So,
it
but
went by quick.
The other ones are pretty quick episodes. They're about half an hour, maybe a little over half an hour.
Yeah, there's so much jam-packed into each episode.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
All right, so the first episode was called Human Flow. So how did you rate it?
I rated it a 4.0 unanswered questions.
I rated it tons higher than you did, but go ahead.
Really?
Say what you were gonna say.
So unanswered questions in that, and this isn't a spoiler because of course it's the first episode. There are some things in this episode that you never get an answer to. Where did the guy get his wound? Like he just started off with a wound and was turned away at the checkpoint. So where did that come from? Was that a bite? Was that a stab wound? Who stabbed him? And like the people being held hostage in that house where they just you walk in and it's like, oh, sorry, wrong house, and just shut the door. Like there's no explanation after that. Like what was going on?
So we will talk about the no explanations thing because I have some comments about that.
And personally, I loved it. Like it just leaves it hanging out because that's real life. Like there are so many unanswered questions in life.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you rate it?
I rated it 4.897 out of 5 separating belly wounds.
Oh.
So we both were a little fixated on the belly wound.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I thought this was really good. This was definitely A material. It wasn't a 5, but it was really close to a 5.
I probably rated it a little low. And I think when I went back and watched episode 1, I conflated episode 1 and episode 2, and so I thought way more happened in this episode.
Oh, okay.
And so much goes on in this episode, but so much happens after this episode.
Isn't that funny? You thought it was shorter, but you thought there was more in it.
Oh, yeah. I thought like we were way past the point that we ended in this episode. Yeah. So, that's probably why I rated it so low is I felt like there was way more because, God, just so much happens in 8 episodes.
Okay, so after we talk, you're going to have to tell me if your rating goes up.
I think it's already going up. I think I'm already talking myself up.
Very good, because I really thought that this was definitely an A and not a B.
Yeah.
So I tried to find numbers, and here's the hard thing. So there's not really a good system of tracking viewership or tracking numbers for things in Netflix like they do with Nielsen ratings for broadcast or for cable. So the only stuff that I could find was like it's a 6.5 out of 10 on IMDb. It's a 60% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I actually thought those ratings were pretty low.
They are absolutely low. So I looked into that a little bit more. The series overall on IMDb has a 6.5 rating. But if you average out the rating per episode, it comes to 7.125.
Which is still kind of low.
It's still kind of low, but I think it's funny that each episode... There's not an episode that's rated below a 6.3, but overall the series is a 6.5.
Huh, I wonder how they came up with that number.
I think it's just people can rate the entire series or they can rate it per episode, and you can do both or neither, so, but yeah, 60% on Rotten Tomatoes. I just don't listen to the critics. And I have a little bit more to say about why you should not listen to a lot of the criticism about the show. We'll get into that.
Well, it also got some really good reviews. So this may be a one-off, but I found this at tvseriesfinale.com. And all of the ratings for all of the individual episodes were over a 9 out of 10.
Wow.
And they had an average of like 375 votes per episode.
Wow.
So it got really good reviews. ScreenRant.com gave it a great review. Did you see the reviews from Stephen King?
I did.
So I wrote them down because I thought they were worth mentioning. So the first, and I don't know if these are tweets. They look like they're tweets.
Yeah, they are.
The first thing he says is, just when you think there's no scare left in zombies, this comes along. Existential hell in the suburbs, stripped to the bone. And then he says, no long, fraught discussions, no endless flashbacks because there's no backstory.
Yes.
No grouchy teens. Dialogue is spare. Much shot with a single handheld camera, very fluid. Showrunners could learn a lot from this, if they could work, that is. And there were a lot of people who felt like that second tweet was like a direct dig at The Walking Dead.
Wow. That is super high praise from Stephen King.
Mm-hmm. I'm not digging on the fact that he was banging The Walking Dead, but I totally get where he's coming from. It's just got a very different feel.
And how do you not make the comparison? Right. You know, Uprock's headline was Netflix Black Summer is the show the original Fear the Walking Dead should have been.
Okay, and we'll talk about that too.
Okay, good.
Because I wrote that headline down, and I wrote that headline down for a reason, because this, I'll just say it, is what I wanted to see from Fear the Walking Dead.
And to be fair, if you actually read the article that Uprocks did, they say that, you know, Fear didn't start out this way, but it's sort of become this way because they've rebooted themselves. So it's not really a knock to Fear the Walking Dead, except for maybe, I don't know, the first 3 seasons.
Exactly.
Which I have to tell you, I started watching Deadwood.
Oh, really? And?
Yeah. I love it.
So did you buy it on iTunes, or how are you watching it?
We bought it.
Okay.
So I have to say that for all of the crap that we gave Kim Dickens as her character Madison, it is the character Madison and not Kim. She is a great actress, and I love her in Deadwood.
Oh,
and
great.
I look forward to seeing the movie. I will probably finish binging the show by the time the movie comes out in May, I think.
Is Ian McShane amazing?
Yes. Oh, so like I'm having a really hard time like hating him or liking him, and I can't tell which, because I love Ian McShane, but his character is just a wow. Yeah, he's a really terrible guy.
He's kind of not a very nice person in American Gods, or should I say not a very nice god in American Gods.
Yeah, but really, are there any good gods, you know?
Oh, that's a very fraught question.
There would be you can't micromanage people. Like, so, I mean, you can't be, I know you're omnipotent and omnipresent and everything, but like, you just can't be everywhere at once and do everything for everyone. Like Jim Carrey proved that in his movie about God. So yeah, I mean, nothing against any of the gods, but you know, you gotta let people do what people do.
All right. We are way off the beaten track again.
and
it's partially my fault.
People are horrible. Like, and this show kind of proves it.
Yes, it does. Oh my God. Especially in episodes 1 and 2, you see some of the worst of people.
And it seesaws back and forth too. And we'll kind of get into that when we talk about Spears.
Okay, cool.
And Rose.
So did you have anything specific about the title?
So I keep flashing back to the beginning of the episode when all the people are like flowing out of their house and coming from side streets, and they're trying to find the evac point. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they're all flowing kind of in one direction. And then you also get the round robin of everyone's story. We repeat the first 5 minutes.
I like that.
Yeah, we repeat the first 5 minutes for everyone. So everyone starts out, you know, like right after the sirens finish, and then they kind of commingle. Like in the background, you see the next person's story start to start, but you're still continuing with the other people. And then it, you know, goes back 5 minutes and you start off with the next person's story, and you just, everyone's in the background for this person. And it's just, it has this really amazing flow. So human flow.
The other scene that I visualize is when they break through the barricade on the bridge and go streaming across the bridge.
Yep. The checkpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I had to kind of rewatch and think about, what human flow meant, because it's sort of a standout episode, as far as titles go.
I didn't look at the other titles.
Mm.
So that's interesting. I'll have to look at the other titles and kind of think about this in context of the other titles.
Yeah, they're very descriptive in their titles. So Human Flow was the first one, and Drive was the second one. Summer School, Alone, Diner, Heist, The Tunnel, and The Stadium.
Oh, so obviously Heist was the one that the heist was referenced, the movie The Heist. Interesting.
Yeah, so all of them were very descriptive in what's going on in the episode.
Well, and if you watch episode 2, which I just rewatched last night, Drive is a very important part of episode 2.
Yes. So we don't get all of the characters, like they kind of show us all of the characters, because they're doing it like in chapters, where the first chapter is Rose and the second chapter is Ryan. But we see all of the other characters, but we don't get their stories in the first episode. We don't get everyone's story. So yeah, episode 2 is definitely an important one.
Mm-hmm. So let's see, writers. It was written by this episode was written by Carl Schaefer and John Himes. Carl Schaefer is actually credited as a creator of Z Nation. So we should probably talk a little bit about Z Nation before we talk about the writers. So this is theoretically a prequel.
Right. To the sci-fi series Z Nation.
Which I looked it up, and there were 5 seasons. It's been canceled.
Yes. So, yes, it was not picked up by Sci-Fi, but I think Netflix has the option to pick it up if they so choose.
Oh, they must be kicking themselves over at Sci-Fi, because this is such a better series.
It definitely is. Like, and I mean, I say that having never watched Z Nation, but just watching the commercials for it, it never piqued my interest. It looked a little too zany for the zombie apocalypse.
I will totally confess that I only watched the first episode, and I thought it was so lame that I never went back to it.
So you can do funny zombie. I mean, Shaun of the Dead, that is a hilarious movie.
Zombieland?
Yes.
iZombie?
Yes, absolutely. Amen to all of those.
Yeah.
You can do funny zombie, but yeah, they couldn't pull it off, in my opinion.
I felt like they couldn't find a balance. They wanted to be The Walking Dead and they wanted to be Shaun of the Dead, and you can't do both in the same movie. You just can't.
No. You got to pick one. You either got to be serious or you got to go with the funny.
Yeah. And this is definitely on the serious side.
Yeah.
So going back to our writers, so Carl Schaefer was credited as a Z Nation creator. He's actually only credited as a writer for this episode. He is otherwise just credited as a creator of the universe that it exists in. He wrote 11 episodes of Z Nation. He was involved in other things like that I recognize, like The Ghost Whisperer, the series The Dead Zone. He had an episode of Monk. So he's had some kind of random things like that. And then John Himes, who also was our director for this episode, wrote 4 episodes this season, 5 episodes of Z Nation, and he also is credited as being the showrunner for this first season of this series.
So there's only 8 episodes, so he helped write 4 of the 8 episodes.
Right. And was showrunner for all of them.
Wow.
And we don't know at this point if it's going to get picked up for a second season, but with the acclaim that it's getting, I suspect it's probably going to be.
Right. And I think this is going to be one where they could do anthology seasons where each season is a standalone.
Right. You don't have to follow the other characters.
No. I mean, maybe we will get answers to, the family being held hostage in the home. Maybe that's next season. But yeah, I would love to see a second season, and I would love to see either a few of the characters overflow into the next season or absolutely none of them. I mean, either way would be great.
I have to be honest and say in 8 relatively short episodes, I am invested in these characters. I would like to know what happens to these characters.
That's funny because a lot of the criticism revolves around lack of character development.
I know, and I disagree with that.
I do too.
And it sounds like we're going to get into that.
We'll get into that.
So a couple more things about John Hyams. He wrote the screenplay for Universal Soldier: Day of Reckoning. He actually directed Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren in the second Universal Soldier movie. He's got other stuff like NYPD Blue, Chicago PD, Chicago Fire. But I have to say, and this is not very nice, I'm going to be a little bit demeaning here. He and Carl Schaefer didn't really have any huge things to their credit. So I was kind of surprised by that. I mean, I think I almost feel like this is a breakout for the both of them.
I was going to say, how many people has the Walking Dead given their start, and they've broken out from that? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, just fresh people, fresh ideas, fresh meat from the grinder.
I could be totally wrong. There could be someone out there who thinks that Universal Soldier 2 is a huge breakout movie. So,
well, NYPD
please send us feedback.
NYPD Blue had its day.
Right.
I mean, totally. That was a groundbreaking series in its time.
Totally. And the Ghost Whisperer and the Dead Zone, I mean, they had their days as well, but I just didn't see anything huge in either of these guys' backgrounds. One of the things that I did think was interesting is that John Hyams, the showrunner, director, and one half of the writing team for this first episode, actually started his career in painting and sculpture.
Wow.
So he didn't even start out in film. And then in 1997, he wrote, directed, and produced his first film called One Dog Day, as opposed to 10 Dog Night, which is happening out in my living room right now. I think I may have to go kill my husband.
There must be a moose in the yard.
I don't know what's going on. I'm about to swear, but I don't want Rob to end up with the editing problem, so...
I think my lab can hear your dogs through the headphones because she just came into the room and is just staring at me intensely.
Oh, my God. So let's back up just for the people who want to hear my voice again, because I know there must be at least one person out there who's still listening. So this guy wrote, directed, and produced his first film in 1997, and it was called One Dog Day. And that's what kind of launched him into TV and film.
Interesting.
Yeah. So,
and he was a sculptor and a painter, you said?
A sculptor and a painter before he got into television and film.
So he's just super creative all around.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
And now he's created, I think, one of the best zombie series out there.
IMDb, why is there no synopsis for One Dog Day?
I was actually going to look, so I'm glad that you're looking because I was curious.
Yeah, no, fail.
Huh.
There is no plot, no synopsis on IMDb for it. That's very odd.
Well, it sounds like it was a critical success.
Huh.
From the little bit that was on IMDb. So the other thing that I wanted to say about John Hyams, and you probably saw this in the interview that you watched because we watched the same interview. So Jamie King, the woman who played Rose, said that this series was kind of John Hymes's love letter to his wife.
Yes.
And it was about like women's strength and how women could overcome anything for the sake of their children.
Yeah, and I would have never pegged that.
Me either.
So again, with the super creativity.
And the other thing that she said that I thought was really interesting was this really evolved while kids were being separated from their families at the border.
Right.
So she and the showrunner both really took a lot of inspiration from that.
Yeah.
So we might as well go into Jamie King since she is our featured cast member.
Yes. So Jamie King, not Jamie Priestley.
Right.
When the other half showed a picture of her, like from the internet, I looked at her and I was like, immediately I thought Jamie Priestley, and I don't know why, because they're two like really totally different women, but they really kind of look alike. So Jamie King. So let's see. She is a top fashion model. which I found that interesting. I don't know any of her modeling work. She's got a ton of acting credits for someone who is billed as a top model. Her first appearance was in Happy Campers, and interestingly enough, Blow. Do you remember that movie?
Oh, I think I do.
Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
Penelope Cruz. It's kind of based on the true story of how George, I think it's Jung, became the big cocaine dealer in like the late 70s, early 80s. So it's kind of that story. So I kind of want to go back and see what character she played in that movie, because I can't picture her. And that, I think that's a pretty big movie for it being your second movie.
Mm-hmm.
And she's actually got a name. She's Christina Jung. Oh, she's the daughter. Wow. That was 2001. She's the daughter. So Jamie King would have been 21. Interesting.
And she looks young. She's small. She looks young. So I bet she looked a lot younger than she actually was playing.
Yes. So right on the heels of Blow, her third movie was Pearl Harbor, which was a critical flop. Had a lot of big stars in it.
I actually really enjoyed that movie, but I was kind of in my Ben Affleck phase. So
yeah. Oh, I'm just entering my Ben Affleck phase. Triple Frontier on Netflix. Yeah, Charlie Hunnam and Ben Affleck and a couple of other guys, but those are the important ones. Yeah. So she was in the movie Slackers. I've actually seen that movie. And then Bulletproof Monk. I don't know if
I vaguely remember that movie.
Okay. She actually learned some martial arts on the set, and she broke her finger on the set of that movie. And she didn't do it. She didn't break her finger doing martial arts. She actually stumbled coming out of her trailer.
Did you catch that she hurt herself a couple of times on this production?
Yes.
So she broke her hand in 3 places.
Yep.
And she tore a bunch of tendons in one of her ankles.
Yeah, I think they had to stop filming, if I remember right. They had to halt filming for like a day or something. She's been in a couple of music videos she was in one for Robbie Williams and one for her friend, Lana Del Rey. She's in the movie White Chicks. And I have seen that movie. And she plays kind of a, dumb, blonde, rich chick. So that was pretty funny. And then for me, I remember her from Sin City. She played Goldie/Wendy. She played twins, one of whom dies. So she plays 2 characters, but it's really kind of the same chick. Did you ever see Sin City and remember her?
I did not. I know okay. I should. I know I should because I know it's from a graphic novel, but I haven't.
She was also in the follow-up to Sin City, Dame to Kill, something like that. Not as good as Sin City. God, she was in a couple of series like The OC and Worst Week of My Life. And then Kitchen Confidential.
I was wondering if that had anything to do with the Anthony Bourdain book.
Okay, so I thought that Kitchen Confidential was like a reality series, like, that on the Food Network where, you have you follow the cooks and stuff like that.
Yeah, but no, it looks like it was actually a series, like a fictional series.
Right. And it had Bradley Cooper in it. How did I miss that?
I don't know, but it really makes me wonder if it was based on the Anthony Bourdain book about working in the food industry, which was really good.
That's funny. Yeah, that was way back in 2005, 2006. TV series The Class. She's in the movie My Bloody Valentine. That's a good, if you like a slasher, gore fest movie.
What was the series Heart of Dixie that she was in? Did you hear anything about that?
Yeah, so she was in a ton of episodes. I never watched it. She was in 76 episodes of that. So she was one of the main characters. I never did watch it, but it also starred Rachel Bilson. I'm going to say this wrong. Bilson. And they're best friends now. And that series is over. But yeah, I had heard of it, but I had never seen it. I guess it was pretty popular to have, at least 4 or 5 seasons. She voiced in Star Wars: The Clone Wars, the series.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, and then she voiced Transformers: The Power of the Primes. And she's got 3 things, one completed and 2 in post-production. And I think the one I'm most excited for has no synopsis. It just has a title, and it's called How to Cook Your Daughter.
That looks like a great title. I have to admit, I was kind of sucked in by the title.
I really hope it's about what I think it's about. Oh, there's a good Tales of the Crypt episode about that. Yeah, so like I said, she's a big model. Let's see.
So she's got some kind of tough stuff in her past. She's a reformed heroin addict.
Yes.
She's been sober since 1997, and IMDb said that was when her then boyfriend died of an OD.
Yes. So, after she got cleaned up, she found her husband, and they've been married for 12 years, which is a really long time in Hollywood.
And they have 2 kids.
They have 2 kids, but she was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome and endometriosis after 9 doctors. So if that doesn't tell you how hard women's issues are to diagnose, I don't know what tells you.
Well, and it sounds like she's gone through multiple in vitro fertilization. She had a very complicated delivery with their first kiddo.
She's had an ectopic pregnancy. She's had 5 miscarriages. 4.5 took 4.5 years to conceive their first child. And then she gave birth, or she had an early delivery because she had preeclampsia. Am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm. And this was the kid who had transposition of the great arteries, right?
Right.
Of the great vessels.
Right. And in the interview you and I both watch, which is on YouTube, the channel is Build Series. She gets very, very emotional about talking about Black Summer and being a mother and everything she went through to have her children, and the struggles that she's had with the health issues that at least her first child has had. So it was funny. I was, and this is not a criticism at all. She was very unpolished in the interview, and I don't mean that as a criticism. She was very real.
I was going to say maybe raw is a better.
Yeah. She's very, very passionate about this role. And so it was interesting because she's talking to the interview. I mean, and like the interviewer, I think probably got in 3 questions, and Jamie King did the rest. It's a half an hour of Jamie King just pouring her heart out. So she spoke how, like, I think people would normally speak when they're talking to each other. It didn't seem like an interview. It just sort of seemed like, Jamie King, the confessional.
And she shared some really interesting stuff. I mean, she shared a few things that I put in Whisperer's Corner. One is that the guy who played Ryan is actually deaf, and he's a Syrian refugee.
Mm-hmm.
And he was actually in a refugee camp for 5 years before coming to Canada, and then ultimately getting cast in this series.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that, just like Walking Dead, they cast real deaf characters in deaf roles and not hearing able people.
The other thing that I thought was really interesting that she shared was that she read the script and she just knew that she was Rose, that she was actually in Europe and she immediately got on a plane and came back to follow up on trying to get this role.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think she does it very, very well too, because to see her in the interview and then to see her as Rose, she definitely is a very different person in the series than she is in real life. So she's an amazing actress in that respect.
Oh man, another thing that I wanted to say is during that interview, they played the trailer for the season.
Uh-huh.
And the trailer was awesome.
So
if you're unconvinced about watching this just based on hearing us talk about it, trust me, just watch the trailer.
Yeah. So like, I don't know about your Netflix. Apparently you have a different Netflix than I do.
Apparently but when I do.
When you go on to, you search through Netflix and you click on something, it auto plays the trailer for it.
Yeah, and I don't have that experience either.
Oh, that's funny. It must be a setting. So it auto played the trailer and I was just, 45 seconds and I was hooked. I binged the entire series in one day.
Okay, so since this is in the trailer, I don't feel bad about spoiling this, but and I'm not even going to say who the character is, but one of our main characters gets chased through some like ducting or venting by a zombie, and it is so creepy.
It's so anxiety inducing.
It really is. It was phenomenal.
By the end of it, I was just like, just give up, just die. Yeah. Like, there's just no hope. Just let it get you.
Yeah, that was horrible and fabulous all at the same time.
It definitely was. So yeah, I had no idea that Jamie King had been through so much in her life. And I think it's amazing where she's at now, given where she came from.
And if you're curious about her, I would really take the 30 minutes and watch that interview. You said it was the Build Up series. Is that what you said?
It's Build series.
Build series. It was really good. It's like the second or third thing that you get on YouTube when you put her name in YouTube.
Oh, see, we must have different settings of that because it was like the 23rd thing down. I'm like, there's got to be an interview somewhere.
I just put Jamie King, Black Summer, and that was like the second or third thing that came up.
Okay, so I searched them separately. I searched Black Summer, and then I searched Jamie King. I did not search Jamie King, Black Summer.
See, you just have to use the right search rubric.
Apparently.
Well, anything else about Jamie King?
Not that I had. Did you?
I don't think so. Just that, I was surprised that she had as much as she did and that there were definitely things that I've seen her in and didn't realize it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I didn't, I would have never been able to, I thought she was Jamie Priestley. I could have picked her out of the lineup.
Well, and she was right. She was Rose. She totally inhabited this character.
Yep. She nailed it.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Well, Whisperer's Corner is very light again. I looked up a little bit about Black Summer and found out that it is filmed in Calgary, Canada.
Mm-hmm. Whereas Z Nation was filmed in Spokane.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
So, our family's from Central Washington, so the other side of the mountains from Seattle. So even though Spokane is a really long drive from Central Washington, it's still sort of in the general area because it's not Seattle.
Right, exactly. Because anything that's not Seattle is basically Eastern or Central Washington.
Right.
What was the other stuff that I had? I had a little tiny bit about Walking Dead. So at Walker Stalker Chicago, which just happened this past weekend, Kari Payton actually told the interviewer that he fully expected to be killed off in season 9, episode 15 at the Pikes. He said he had his bags packed and that they already had one badass dreadlocked sword wielding woman. So he figured he was probably out.
Oh, that's funny.
And then the only other thing that I had was that Lauren Cohan is kind of teasing a return to the last season of Supernatural. So she apparently had a recurring role in episode 3 and her character was killed off, but she kind of joked about being brought back for the last season. So I think it was probably clickbait more than anything, but I thought I would throw that out there.
I had no idea.
And then I did write down the Uproxx article about Black Summer is what Fear the Walking Dead should have been, but that is actually was kind of in my rotting potpourri. It just was really what I wanted to see in Fear the Walking Dead. I mean, they told us we were going to see the beginning of the zombie apocalypse and kind of how things fell apart. And I don't feel like we ever totally got that from Fear.
Okay, and so it was funny. We were talking about opioid abuse before the start of this episode, because we talk about super random things before the episode. I was going to say,
yeah, because we talk about really light things before we podcast.
So the feeling that I had watching this was, we always want to see this perspective of the ZA. We want to see the beginning, and each, like Walking Dead and now Fear the Walking Dead in some respects, it's become more of a drama soap opera. It's not the thrilling, start of the zombie apocalypse, like outbreak type thing. And so I feel like we're like chasing the dragon, to use a drug term. We just need bigger and bigger hits of the zombie apocalypse every time. And this fulfilled the need for me.
I was going to say this was a very satisfying hit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's very real, I felt like.
So why don't we just go ahead and launch into our goods, bads, and uglies? What was your good?
And this sounds like such a small good, but it added to the show and the anxiety that surrounded, the first episode. And it continues throughout the series, but I loved the camera work. Mm-hmm. And Jamie King talked about it in her interview too.
And Stephen King mentioned it in his tweet.
Yes. And particularly right in the first 30 seconds of the first show, they have kind of, you would call it an air raid siren, but here we call it a tsunami warning, because that's what they sound like here. And I'm sure everyone has, Tornado Country has theirs. So after that starts going off, everyone starts streaming out of their house. And I feel like the camera work was done by a drone, just because we get like this super overhead, and then like it comes down into the crowd and it turns sharply when they do. And it was just, I can't imagine that it was done any other way than by drone. And it was so smooth, and, it was all done in one take. And Jamie King in the interview talked about how they did these really long takes, just for the sake of how the scene felt and the flow of everything, and the anxiety and just the, what's happening now of what's going on. And
she talked about never actually having rehearsed with the man who played her husband and with the girl who played her daughter, that it was all like right there and fresh and raw when they first did it.
And Spears. So when Spears rescues her,
yes.
And she goes up and hugs him, that was like they had never met before. So that was a genuine, and they hadn't rehearsed that. That wasn't in the script.
And the way that he kind of pulled back from her.
Yeah. And they talked about it later, and he's like, I felt like that's what my character would do, would be try to pull away. And, it was such a genuine moment, because it was a genuine moment. But the other camera work that I absolutely loved, and I've talked about this with Preacher, there was a one take in the bathroom when
Spears and the soldier are fighting.
Yes. And it is a brutal fight scene. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're smashing each other's heads in and elbowing each other, and just windows are breaking, and it's super brutal. And it is all done in one take, from the moment they started to the very, very end, when, the guy gets shot in the head and you see that. The camera is just in there in that tiny bathroom with them, and it's all done at once. There's no cutaways, there's no editing, nothing. That had to be hard to choreograph and do all in one take. So I just loved, I think it totally added to the overall feeling of the show. And I loved how we repeat the first 5 minutes. We mentioned that before, how we get everyone's kind of not really a backstory. It's kind of a starting point, but we get everyone's like first 5 minutes, and everyone else is kind of in the background of the 5 minutes you're seeing. So I loved how they did this. I love how they shot it.
I agree. I mean, I think it was really, really phenomenal. And they managed to maintain that throughout the bulk of the series.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. So what was your good?
Well, my good was actually some of that camera work, but it was following the zombie girl after she gets hit by the truck and turns.
Yes.
I thought that was so good. And we really saw 3 aspects of zombies that we've been talking about over the past couple of episodes. So she was a rage zombie, she was a fast zombie, and she was an infected zombie.
Yes.
We still don't know exactly the story behind the infection.
And, they probably get into that a little bit in the Z Nation, because this, I keep reading stuff where they talk about that this show starts out 6 weeks after the outbreak. And you would think it starts like day 1 of the outbreak.
Oh, I was going to ask you how soon you thought it was into the outbreak. I figured it was a little further than day 1, but I didn't think it was as far as 6 weeks.
Well, they already have checkpoints set up where they've got things fenced off and barricades. And it seems like everybody knew what to do. They needed to go to the evac zone, and they had their papers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I totally believe that this is 6 weeks after, patient 0. And Z Nation, I think, takes place 3 years in.
Oh, really?
If I remember right. I remember reading that right. So it is definitely, I mean, that's probably why, other than this is a serious show and Z Nation really isn't, that's probably why it has a different feel, is because there's a huge time jump. So, yeah.
Well, I just loved getting the perspective of the zombie.
Yeah, I did see somebody write about that.
I felt like it was really good too, like seeing her run through that yard and then get to the door and like bang against the door and scream just with rage. It was really good.
And we've talked about the rage zombies being so much scarier, and because I mean, the girl was hit by a car, and she basically probably died of internal injuries.
That would have been my guess.
Yeah. And so you see that, and, she's to the point where she can't move. It's almost like she's paralyzed, but I think it's probably, she's in so much pain and shock, and, that she as a person, she can't move, but as a zombie, she gets right up. There's no pain. And when she's running, she's not tired. And that is scary as hell.
And these zombies turn really fast.
They do. I mean, literally, she closed her eyes, and I mean, it was probably one breath for the audience, and she was, back on her feet, puking blood.
Another thing that I really appreciated was that the makeup was really simple.
Yes.
It was not big dramatic effects like we see with Greg Nicotero's zombies. God knows I love Greg Nicotero, but it was basically some blood, some bloodied eyes, and some dark eyeliner. Yeah, and some veins, and that was about it.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you didn't really need it because, we're seeing newly infected.
Right. These are all fresh zombies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah.
So what was your bad?
Barbara.
Really?
Okay. And it wasn't totally her. It was the ladies, trust your instinct. Like, F politeness. Okay.
Which is a shout out to My Favorite Murder.
Yes. Yes. Trust your gut. When you are in the zombie apocalypse and you are in a car, and for some reason you stop to check your map, first of all, and a dude comes up and knocks on your window and is like, hey, I need a ride.
And I'm one of the good guys.
Yeah. And it's me and my family who you don't see at all. Don't let him in the car. She immediately was like, nope. But he talked her into it. She let him talk her into it. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's a big nope for me. And I was just, one of the first things I said, well, as this was going on, I was just like, I think maybe if I were in this situation and and I was kind of letting him talk me into it, I would give him a little test. Just roll up the window and act like you're going to start driving away. And if he starts pounding on the window, screaming obscenities at you, probably a bad guy. If he does anything else, still probably a bad guy. Like, just no. Trust your gut. Like, in the zombie apocalypse, when people are literally beating each other to death to get supplies and into houses and out of houses, no, don't. Just keep driving. Nope.
Well, and this is stuff that comes from episode 2, but remember those scenes where they're driving through the alley and like people are throwing things at their car and trying to like push burning things out in front of their car, just doing anything to try to get them to stop.
Right. And the guy even said it. The guy, Ben, the bad guy, Ben, he even said it. He's like, people will roadblock you and steal your gas and leave you for dead. Mm-hmm. I know, and I'm just like, yeah, no, because you're doing it.
I know. Wink, wink.
There are really bad people out here. Trust me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So that was my bad, was just, ladies, trust your, and ladies and guys, trust your gut. Roll up the window, just drive away. And when somebody does come to your rescue, when Ben has carjacked you because you stupidly let him in, and you're able to get back into the car because the two dudes are fighting, don't get into the back seat and watch. Get into the back seat, crawl into the front, stomp on the gas. There you go. Problem solved. Then you get to the stadium, you're fine.
Although we did get one of my favorite characters out of that moment.
We did. And I think we would have got him anyway, just how the group kind of formed up. Mm-hmm. But yeah. Yeah. So what was your bad?
I am going to be honest and say that I had very little bad. I had a hard time coming up with a bad. And finally, my thing was, I'm really glad that I watched it with closed captioning because some of the dialogue was really hard to hear.
That's funny.
That's my bad.
When they introduced, they showed her in this episode, but they didn't introduce her in this episode, but she speaks. When Sun started to talk, I was like, oh crap,
no, they did introduce Sun in this episode.
Yeah, but they didn't give her
They didn't give her a name.
Yeah.
Right? And they didn't give her a chapter. You're right.
But like she's non-English speaking, and so I was like, "Oh crap! I'm missing a closed caption somewhere. Like I need the translation." Nope, that's Sun. She doesn't speak English.
Yep.
And that's so true to life. You would run into deaf people and people who don't speak English, and all just everyone. So yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, so I had very little bad to say about this series. I really enjoyed it that much, and it's been a long time since I've really enjoyed something this much.
Yeah. Yeah. What's funny is you had trouble picking a bad, and I chose a bad that wasn't really related to the series. It was related to just, when you're fighting for your life, don't be polite.
Right.
I actually had a hard time finding a good just because I couldn't nail it down,
Really?
Everything was good, Like I had a hard time coming up with just one thing, but I think the camera work is what really, really struck me. It puts you into the moment.
Well, so what was your ugly? Was it a good ugly or was it a bad ugly?
It was kind of a bad ugly.
Okay.
And I know, I just said that everything about the show was good, but so you're 6 weeks in, approximately 6 weeks into the zombie apocalypse. You must have learned by now, as the military, as the government, or whatever, whoever's in charge of this evac, that everyone who dies turns quickly. What is the point of checkpoints? You're not going to contain it. Everyone who dies turns. What is the point of checkpoints? Right?
I'm kind of trying to muddle that through in my brain. I mean, I guess the only point of checkpoints would be to sort and process people with their papers, not necessarily to prevent infection from spreading, but to try to deal with where you're sending the population to.
Well, and you can't deal with the infection spread because everyone's infected. You get one you get one person who dies of, I don't know, a stroke or a wound they didn't disclose or something. You get one person in a crowd that turns. And I mean, we talked about it in 28 Days Later, where one of the characters said it was just one person turned into a horde, and eventually it was just an entire crowd of zombies, and it was body upon body. It happens that quickly. So,
and it definitely seems like we're playing by a blend of Walking Dead rules and 28 Days Later rules, because everyone turns whether they're bitten or not. So regardless of how you die, unless it's a headshot, you turn.
Right.
And it's really fast.
Yes. Like literally like one breath away. Like you die, you know, someone breathes and you're up. Yeah. So that was my ugly, is I find it funny that there was one little piece of trivia in this first episode on IMDb, and it was actually where they were correcting somebody who thought it was a goof, that thought it was something wrong with the episode. Someone had said something about the military guys seem to have full beards, and they don't have, their equipment is very non-universal. It looks like it's just thrown together, but it was corrected, and it said these men are probably National Guard who were just called up and didn't have a chance to, you know, shave and take out their earring and, you know, have all of the appropriate weapons passed out, or, you know, like, so it, you know, but it was just, what's the point of checkpoints? I didn't understand. And like, what's the point of the papers? Like, how do you get papers? What do the papers mean? You know, like, why wouldn't you be able to have papers? And then there was one point when they were taking Spears wherever, and they went into a home to take a break or something. They knocked on the door, and the two people in the house, the military guy was like, "You're in a mandatory evac zone. You need to get out of here."
Right.
So it's like, why were those two people still in there? Did they not have papers? And if you're in a mandatory evac zone, why are they stopping people at the checkpoints? You know, like, there was very non-continuity with some of the rules about the military and the checkpoints and the evac and everything. So that's kind of my bad ugly, is I kind of didn't understand the point of all that.
So I wonder if some of it has to do with what Rose's husband said to her toward the beginning of the episode, where he says it's all falling apart. They have no plan. There is basically no structure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe they didn't have good answers to all of that.
Yeah, and that definitely could be. I mean, I'm just assuming that, you know, we would know 6 weeks in that anybody who dies turns. So, but maybe it was just like, no, we started with checkpoints. Let's just stick to the checkpoint plan, you know?
So this is kind of tangentially related, but you made me think of it. Do you realize that two of the soldiers that we saw at the very beginning with Spears were two of the soldiers that we saw in episode 8?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Because they went off to do their thing and left Spears, quote unquote, Spears, the original and the Spears we know.
Yes.
Together. And that was another thing, is like the original Spears was just like people were too easily duped in a time of panic.
All right. And there was a little continuity error in terms of the uniform that the character that we know as Spears was wearing. At one point, he had the name on the uniform, and then at another point, there was just Velcro there, and then at another point, the name was back.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. I always think it's funny when people notice those things. I unless it's glaring, which that kind of sounds like it was, but maybe if I like went back and watched it a third time.
I was definitely watching, so
yeah,
because, you know, I knew that was the character that we know as Spears, not actually Spears. So
right. And you get that in episode 1, that Spears is not actually Spears. Yeah. So that's not really spoilery.
We're hoping you've watched episode 1 if you're listening this far.
Or, I mean, there's so much that happens in the rest of the series that even if we did spoil episode 1 for you, go watch everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's really good. So, what was your ugly, and was it a good or bad?
So it was a good ugly, and you really kind of touched on it already, but I'm going to elaborate on it. Just the intricate layering of the story. Mm-hmm. So we first see Sun at the trucks, but we're focused on Rose, her husband, and her daughter, and we don't realize that Sun is even part of the story until later on in episode 1.
Right.
And I didn't even realize the first time that we watched it that we actually saw her at that point in the story. It was going back and rewatching it for this was like, oh my goodness, there's Sun.
Yep, me too.
You know, the moment where we see Spears save Rose, and then we go back to his story. And we get that layering up to that point. We see the girl that I talked about who was the zombie girl who got hit by the truck. And then
Ryan's story.
Right. Yeah, and then we go back and see it from another perspective.
Yeah.
We see it in Lance's story also.
Yep.
So I just loved the way that they kept layering on.
We actually see it in Spears' episode, part 2.
Do we?
Because they walk past each other. Yeah. So when they're escorting him one way, the couple is walking the other way.
I totally missed that. See,
I said, they're all over the background.
Mm-hmm. It's layers upon layers upon layers. It was so good. I loved the way that they did that.
And what's funny, the checkpoint seems to be sort of one urban housing development area that, you know, it's a big neighborhood that they've probably just walled off or fenced off or something. And so these people are all kind of neighbors in some respect, I would imagine. Either that or they just like cordoned everyone off as they were, you know, no matter if they were home or not. But so a lot of these people should know each other, but so we keep going round and round this neighborhood with all of the characters that we see, and the one burning Jaguar. Do you remember that? The car?
Yeah.
That was kind of, for me, the first time I saw it, I was like, why is that one car on fire? You know, but it kind of was like a marker of where you were in the neighborhood, and that everyone kept going past it or seeing it or focusing in on it, or, you know, so I just thought that was cool that they had something that it would always make you understand where you were in the neighborhood, because everyone was running around this neighborhood.
They kind of did the same thing with the car that Barbara was driving. That was another a place in time where we went back to several times and kind of got drawn back into the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were really good at using, again, just the same story from different perspectives as a way to kind of mark where you were.
And I kind of would like to see how they shot this episode, this and maybe the second episode, because there has to be so much continuity, just specifically for the girl who turns into a zombie. Like, was that filmed first? Was that filmed last? Because I mean, there were points where, you know, there should be blood on the walls, but that actually hasn't happened yet. And, you know, so now there's blood on the walls and the next story happened. And like, it was just, I can't imagine how intricately they had to think out shooting this episode for continuity.
Mm-hmm.
Just amazing. I absolutely agree with your ugly.
Anything for rotting potpourri?
Oh, let's get into it.
So let me just say before we get started, so much running.
I would be dead in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would be the Lance of the group. That poor guy just couldn't catch a break.
No. Yeah. Exercise-induced asthma right here. Yep. There's no running for me. I would be the freeze or fight. I would not be flight. I would have barricaded myself under my house and wait the whole thing out. So, what do you got?
Another thing that I had that I thought was kind of funny is Rose is just so freaking skinny. She would be a terrible survivor in the zombie apocalypse.
She's in shape, but yeah, she needs a few more calories to sustain all of the anxiety and running.
I figure either her stomach is so small that she would be a great survivor in the zombie apocalypse because she wouldn't eat anything, or she's just so freaking skinny she's going to wither away into nothing really quickly.
She's lean and mean. You know, and that was one thing is I did like the vulnerability of her character in that, like, we sometimes see, like, yeah, I guess when you have adrenaline going and something is chasing you, you kind of have some superhuman strength. But her climbing that chain link fence and not really being able to get over the top. I mean, there was concertina wire on it, razor wire, but you could have gotten over that if it meant your life. You know, you'd get cut up really bad, but you wouldn't die of a zombie bite, you know. So she, you know, she got to the top and couldn't get any further. And so I kind of identify with that, you know, you probably could do a few superhuman feats of strength, but not for long and not very much. You know, she had just ran, you know, blocks and blocks, and had something chasing her. So I loved how people were real stuff happened.
Okay, you made me think of another rando thing that is totally real. People are terrible shots in this universe. There are very few good, clean headshots. It's not like The Walking Dead where everybody gets a headshot on the first try.
Right? Like Spears put four shots into the trunk of the one zombie before he got a headshot in at point blank range.
Yes.
And don't get me wrong, I am a really good shot, but my targets generally aren't moving that fast.
Yes, I think it's much more realistic.
Yeah, definitely. So speaking of Rose, and I'm going to try and not give anything away on this, but when you go back and when you watch the first episode and you watch it all the way through to the last episode, the evolution of Rose's character is so, I mean, and in such a small amount of time, she just goes from one person to a completely different person. And by that, I mean, when her husband turned, or before her husband turned, I'm sorry, when she was talking about, we have to go find our daughter and you're coming with me and I'm not leaving you and blah, blah, blah. She was steadfastly like, we're doing this together. I can't do this without you. We're leaving together. You're going. And then towards I think it was in the last episode.
Yes.
Where she straight up murders someone for slowing the group down. She's just like, I'm getting to my daughter. I don't care about you. Boom.
That was a completely shocking moment for me.
Yes. So just pay attention to the evolution of Rose.
One thing that I will say that I thought strained belief a little bit, and again, this is the zombie apocalypse, so I have to be honest about that. I'm already suspending disbelief. But she went from homemaker to machine gun toting mama. And I'm not quite sure where she got her familiarity with guns, but she looked pretty comfortable.
Well, and did you see her in the interview?
Yeah, she talked about being really familiar with guns and having to kind of unlearn that for the character.
Yeah, they told her, because her and her dad used to go shooting on weekends, and so they told her that she had to look a little more nervous with a gun to stop being so comfortable with it. I thought that was funny.
I definitely think by the last episode she was machine gun toting mama.
Yeah. But you know, again, her evolution. I mean, just the things that she became willing to do in order to get to the stadium and get her daughter back. I thought that was super interesting. So, speaking of suspension of disbelief, that door that she hid behind was a super solid door for a bathroom.
Oh,
Because that zombie was beating on that door, and I'm like, yeah, no, that thing should have popped by now. I mean, it's one thing to have like the really long screws in that hold your like, I think it's a strike plate for your door in your front door, but that the frame and the door and everything was solid. That zombie was not getting in. That was funny.
I loved the touch and also thought it was completely horrifying that she found that old woman abandoned in her bedroom and the zombie gets that woman.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that was horrible and fabulous all at the same time.
Because it's so real. Mm-hmm. You know, and we saw that in The Walking Dead where people just abandoned that retirement home. And, you know, yeah, you had the gang members come in and take care of
the Vatos.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's totally legit that people would be like, Grandma, you're going to slow us down and you didn't get your papers. See ya. Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Terrible, but totally real. So did you realize right away that Ryan was deaf?
No, I actually was just looking at my notes and I wrote at the end that this is where we first realized that Ryan is deaf because he signs thank you to Rose.
Yes. So I didn't realize it at first. And even on the rewatch, I get why I didn't get it, because when you hear it from Ryan's perspective, it's almost like he's got like a concussion or something. There, it's very garbled and a high pitched ring, and so I assumed that like maybe he was in shock or that kind of thing, and that's why we're hearing it like we are, and because he doesn't speak. And then when Sun comes and grabs him, I'm like, oh, he's not speaking because he doesn't speak English, so he can't really talk to anybody but Sun. And then he doesn't talk at all. And finally, we realize at the end of the episode that Ryan's deaf. Mm-hmm. And of course, that makes me call back to Walking Dead, where now we have one deaf and one hard of hearing character. And, what a difficulty it would be specifically in the zombie apocalypse. I mean, we had just watched a girl get hit by a truck because she was standing in the middle of the road. And here, this guy can't even hear the truck coming, So, that was a really good twist. And everybody kind of had a good twist in their story. Mm-hmm. Even in the, very beginning, the very first episode, everyone kind of had a little bit of a twist.
Nobody is entirely what they seem.
Nope.
Which I liked.
Yeah. Yeah. Because nobody is one thing. Nobody is just a homemaker. Nobody is just a nurse. Nobody is just, whatever hobby they have or job that they do. Everyone is very complex, and you get to see what people will do in a survival situation. And we said we'd come back to it, and we see some people do some pretty terrible things in under an hour. Mm-hmm. But we also see people do some really good things. Barbara was getting carjacked by Ben, and, somebody comes to her aid and is a genuinely good guy. And, he winds up, being one of our favorite characters. And then when the van drives off and it leaves most of our other characters behind.
Yeah.
Rose she tells Sun and Ryan, she's like, come on, you can group up with us.
And Lance is there too.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I keep forgetting about Lance because his little part was so minor. We didn't get much from him at all in this episode.
In the beginning, right.
Right. In fact, I actually have him as Lucky Lance in my notes. And just the sheer dumb luck of this guy. He should not be a zombie apocalypse survivor. Like,
I actually read an article that said exactly that.
Yeah, Lucky Lance. Mm-hmm. Like, dude should have died 10 times over in, like, episode 2. Yeah, no.
So I'm going to bring up something that you brought up, which is lots of questions. And one of the things that I really liked about Black Summer, and this kind of touches on what Stephen King said, is that Black Summer is totally okay with not answering those questions.
Yep.
It's totally okay with not giving the big backstory and not telling us where people got their papers or what the checkpoints are for. And, I didn't mind that I didn't have that.
Yeah.
I felt like it was okay to just go ahead and go on with the story.
And we've talked about that with Walking Dead, #Where's Heath? That, that is true to life, that, you don't always get everybody's complete backstory. And sometimes you don't know what happens to them after the last time you see them. So, yeah.
But the funny thing is that I do love The Walking Dead for what it is. And I do love the backstories and I do love the flashbacks. So they're two really different beasts.
And that's exactly what we were talking about when I said don't listen to the criticisms for the episode, because a lot of the criticism is that there's no character development. Right. And I'm like, I'm okay with that. Like these are, just I like I said, I would be okay if this was a one and done for all of these characters. I'd be okay if a few of them bled over into season 2. But you know what? If we never hear from these, don't get me wrong, all of them were great characters and it was great cast. But if we never see anything, like, that's cool because that's real life.
And they kind of left it open, but they kind of also tied it off. So it could go either way.
Mm-hmm. And they definitely left some unanswered questions at the end, which I won't get into spoilery territory, but it didn't look like the evac went so well.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I want to say, and this kind of goes back to what we were saying about this and The Walking Dead, is there are a lot of people online who are presenting it as a diametrically opposed thing. Like, if you love Black Summer, you can't love Walking Dead because they're so different. And I just want to say that is totally not true. There's room for both of these stories in the zombie universe.
Yeah.
They are not if-then choices. If you love Walking Dead, then you won't love Black Summer. That is totally not the case.
Yeah. No, that's like saying, you can't like peanut butter because you like chocolate. Well, right. Two great tastes go great together. So speaking of that, like, look at all of the zombie stuff that we love. I mean, there's a reason why it's so pervasive in our culture right now. And Jamie King talked about how they paid homage to many different movies, but specifically zombie movies that I could pick out. The Fast Rage Zombies was kind of like 28 Days Later. Mm-hmm. We're coming from the perspective of our main character is separated from her family. So that's like Rick in The Walking Dead.
Definitely.
And, that's kind of a general storyline with a lot of the zombie shows or zombie movies is, separation from loved ones and we seek them out. But in this and The Walking Dead, you were kind of assured that they were alive because, she sees her daughter get taken off in the army truck. And so she knows the last time she saw her daughter, she was alive and she was headed to someplace that was safe. And Rick goes back to his home and he realizes, everything's abandoned, but they packed a bag and they took photos. Mm-hmm. This wasn't, nobody rummaged through their things and took necessities. They took family photos. So they had to be alive when they left here and it had to be them. So there's the hope of family, the reunification of family, like The Walking Dead. And when Rose's husband turns and she's trapped in the bathroom, that to me reminded me of the very beginning of the remake movie, Dawn of the Dead.
It definitely has comparisons to Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, like that whole scene right there was just totally Dawn of the Dead for me. And then I think it was the second or third Resident Evil. The big main goal of everyone was to get to the evac zone, And so I just feel that there were like they took a little piece of everything and they put it together in such a way that it seems fresh and new and exciting and anxiety inducing. So, I don't know if anybody could pick out any more zombie references or zombie movies than that. I'm sure there are a ton if you go back and watch and you are up to date on your zombie viewing.
I would definitely love to hear some feedback. I know that Pedro Pelez loves this because he told us about this series, but I would love to hear what other people have to say.
Yes. Thank you for turning us on to this series, Pedro.
Yes. Well, anything else?
So when Spears was with Spears, and you'll get what I mean if you watch the episode, he offered him cash, like tons of cash, just millions of dollars. I know where it's hidden. I can get you to it. Really? In the zombie apocalypse, is cash money really going to help you? Nope. Nobody's taking cash. Nobody's taking credit. The coin of the realm is weapons, water, and food.
But again, those unanswered questions. And it's okay. It's okay that we don't have answers.
Yeah. But I thought that was funny that everyone always has this, and you see it in real life too, because anytime there is an issue with banks or money, there's always a run on banks, and people withdraw large amounts of cash that they think they can use later. But of course, in the zombie apocalypse, cash has no value, Eventually, maybe precious metals or metals themselves will have value, but paper money will have no value. It's not going to help you at all. You're not going to be able to buy your way onto a train out of there. You're not going to be able to bribe somebody to give you a ride. Nothing. Like, you got to have a gun, you got to have some water, and you got to have some food.
You're making me think about Barbara with her arm full of bracelets of precious gems.
Yes, that was funny. That's actually, I think, in episode 2. But yeah, that was smart. I mean, I kind of think that people would be more inclined to take valuables rather than paper money. Yeah.
I don't know. I think you're right. I think that the currency is food, water, and guns.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what's the point of having a fancy bracelet in the zombie apocalypse? Who cares?
There's always going to be people, though, that are...
Yeah, I guess it's kind of hearkening back to Victor Strand and the diamond cufflinks, Yeah.
And, I think you have this feeling that this is just a thing that's going to happen for like a few weeks or a few months, and we'll get over it. The government will have a plan. The military will take care of us. It'll all be fine in a few weeks. And maybe if I trade, my car for this brick of gold, I will be the better of this in a few weeks. Everyone just, this isn't really happening, I feel like that, the UN is going to swoop in and save us all, as long as we get to the stadium, the dome,
Mm-hmm.
FEMA will get there. I kind of had feelings of New Orleans when I watched this, and everyone's trying to get to the stadium.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The convention center. Yeah.
No, the stadium.
I thought it was a convention center in New Orleans.
No. There's a great line in the movie Live Free or Die Hard with Bruce Willis where...
oh my God, you would remember that, of course.
Where one of the characters, they're talking about, like, no, the government takes care of this. And the guy's like, it took FEMA 10 days to get water to whatever dome is in New Orleans, whatever stadium. It took FEMA 10 days to get there. The government doesn't always have the best of plans. You can't plan for every eventuality. And there's only so much you can do when the infrastructure's taken down and it's chaos and, people are shooting other people in the streets. So, yeah. Water, weapons, and food.
Mm-hmm.
Stock up, people. That's why I like to show preppers. Those people are crazy, but kind of right.
Well, anything else you want to say about Black Summer?
No, there's so much that I want to say, but it's all in the next 7 episodes.
Right. And we definitely don't want to spoil any more than we have.
No, it is a great show. I think we're kind of one and done we're not going to do the entire 8, are we?
I don't think so.
Yeah, so...
we might go back and touch on it again. I mean, we'll see kind of how things go as we get toward Fear the Walking Dead and Good Omens, but I think we're one and done.
Yeah, but definitely a good 8 hours of television.
Not
I
even
highly
that,
recommend.
like a good 6 hours of
Yeah,
television.
yeah. You can watch it in a day. It'll be fine. Netflix will ask you if you're still watching, but you can watch it in a day.
So just a little bit of feedback. Diane LaSorsa posted about our comparison for season 2, episode 12, Better Angels. She said that, pardon me, since you were talking about John Bernthal, he is here filming on Long Island right now. It's called The Many Saints of Newark, a movie prequel to The Sopranos. Just a little info for you.
That's super interesting. I never watched The
Yeah.
Sopranos, but it's such an iconic series.
I just think it's super cool that he's still getting really interesting work.
Yeah.
So that was the one little piece of feedback I had from our page. Hopefully we'll have some feedback about this podcast because I'm definitely interested in hearing what people have to say about Black Summer.
I definitely am too. Yeah. So,
Do we want to know what we want to do next time?
Maybe another comic book episode?
Probably. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think we were doing a one-off, one-on with those. So we'll have to pick one.
You'll have to figure out which comic books you have.
I think I have the first 5 or 6 volumes. And of course, there's 6 books in a volume. So, and it's funny, there was no definitive break in between the books in the volume. I think it's probably like where the entire one page is one scene. I think that's probably how it's broken up in the actual books, that's like the end of the book. But it was very difficult to find the beginning of where we were beginning from.
Try the compendium. I've got the first compendium, the one that you sent me.
Uh-huh.
It's so huge, and there's no separation between issues of the comics or volumes that they were published in, when they were published as like groups of 6 or 7.
Right.
So there's no differentiation.
No, I'm glad you kind of knew a little bit where it was, and the Google helped me.
I was going to say that's what the Google is for.
Right? Yep. Thank you, Walking Dead Wiki.
Oh, I do just want to put it out there that the episode where Phil and I talked about Moon Knight was on Capes and Lunatics. So that's out there if people are interested in hearing about that graphic novel.
Right.
I think we're probably going to talk at some point about the second volume in that run. So
good.
Yeah. And then you're going to be on Capes and Lunatics this weekend talking about Endgame, right?
Unfortunately,
no.
Our theater is sold out.
Oh my God, already?
I cannot see it until Sunday, and it will be after the time of podcasting for Capes and Lunatics.
No, that's terrible.
I was so disappointed. So here's the thing. Endgame is 3 hours long. So our little theater is open very limited hours, and so they can only show one 2D showing on Saturday. Oh no, 2 on Saturday and 1 on Sunday. And the 2 on Saturday were sold out. And the Thursday night preview, the Friday night show, and then Saturday and Sunday they had 3D. Well, I don't see in 3D. Every year I go to the eye doctor and they give you the little test to see, which one of these things pops out at you. And I'm like, nope, I have no depth perception. Make all the jokes you want. I cannot parallel park for anything. I have no depth perception. I cannot see 3D, and trying actually gives me a headache. So I cannot go to 3D movies.
That is a bummer. Well, I'm going to be working, which is why I'm not going to be on Capes and Lunatics, but
the burdens we all face.
Yes.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I will not be on Capes and Lunatics for the Endgame review, but I definitely encourage everyone to go watch the live stream or go to YouTube or listen to it on podcasts. And it's always a good time. The movie reviews are always super fun.
And they definitely are.
I'm really disappointed that I'm not, because I think I've been there for almost every single one of them. I didn't see Shazam, but that's not a Marvel or a DCU, is it?
It's DC.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't. There was a couple of. I haven't seen any of the Batmans or Supermans.
Actually, Shazam has gotten really great reviews.
I did hear that, but I just, not for me.
We'll watch it on video, I'm sure. But
oh, definitely. So if you are lucky enough to see Endgame this coming weekend, I encourage you to watch the movie review on Capes and Lunatics.
Very good. Well, before we sign out, anything else you want to impart to our listeners?
No, I think that we went through it all. I mean, we've podcasted twice as long as the first episode.
I figured we would go long tonight.
Yeah. Spooky Chef, Brian, if you're listening, have you watched Black Summer? And what do you think?
Yes, tell us.
Tell us. All right, everybody. I think this is where we end it. So just remember, take it one dead day at a time.
Very good.
Excellent. Everybody have a good week.
Have a good week.
Bye.
Bye.